is Ajay Kharbanda? I don't recognize this type. Ajay Kharbanda, please identify yourself. Who are you? And why is everyone's video off? Hello. Okay, the reason why I'm looking down is because I've made a standing camera setup because I like standing and talking. But then my laptop's down. So to see who's there, I have to look down. But then to talk, I have to look up. Who is Ajay Kharbanda? ये कौन है हमारे ट्राइब में? Who are you? This person? अरे? Like no response also. Hello, Vijay.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Sujata. Long time since we've interacted. I think the last time we spoke was the December session that we had done.
Hi Mugdha, how are you?
I'm good. Why is everyone's video off? I want to see your nice, beautiful faces.
My net connection is very poor. That's why I'm keeping my video off.
All right. Cool. Are you in the truck, Pratishtha?
We are in the middle of the shifting, as you can see. There's utter chaos.
I can imagine. All right. Get started. We'll continue to join in. So, okay, mute please. My audio video both is clear now?
Yes.
Couple of things I wanted to address. One is, in the tribe itself, we've had people like who do this with us for 3 months, and then they keep asking us when can we start eating normal food, and like that is one of the questions that comes. That is one thing I want to address. The second thing is, cravings, addressing cravings. Where are they coming from? And I recently figured out like the anatomy of stress. Not the anatomy, the physiology of stress and what really happens and how that can trigger hunger. And a lot of people don't realize this probably that's happening unconsciously. And generally, I wanted to catch up with everyone. And then, like, a lot of people had questions around the water fast, electrolytes, supplementation, what to really do when you're water fasting, who can do it. So I just thought instead of typing it all on WhatsApp, I thought I'll quickly address it here only in the Tribe Talks February edition. So see, for people who are asking, like a lot of you right now in the call are people from very, very long ago. So you guys, we've spoken about this, we've addressed this in the past also. What is really normal eating, right? And I really want to put this out upfront that if you think this is just a 3-month intervention to achieve a certain outcome, it's like going to the gym for 1 month, working out really hard, and then imagining that 1 month's effort is going to give you really great, strong muscles and a beautiful aesthetic body 10 years from now. That's not going to happen. Your body is made of what you put into it every day. What you've been able to learn in 3 months with us is what really works for your body, what doesn't work for your body. And if you keep wishing for going back to eating the food that you used to eat before you came to us, before you actually partnered with us for your health, because that's what we think you're doing with us, right? We think you're partnering with us for your health. If you think the entire aim of making changes to whatever you're doing is so that you can go back to eating whatever junk you were eating before, and I'm calling it out junk, right? Because it is that. I think that's a very myopic approach to what we are attempting to do with your health here. So please understand the things that you put into your body before you came to us, whether it was your khakras or whether it was your pizzas or whether it was your chips or whether it was your jalebis and fafras and gulab jamuns and rasgullas, they don't deserve a place in your life only, like going into your mouth, going into your stomach, being broken down into the components that they are, which are very, very hurtful to your body. I don't know why you guys are wishing for putting that in. Okay, so please stop fantasizing about that food, because that food is really toxic to your body. Yes, we all feel like, giving into our taste buds. We all feel like sometimes what people call is enjoying food. And yes, that kind of food can be delicious, right? But it should be an exception. It cannot be the norm. You cannot think of going back to that, or you cannot think that because you've done this work for 3 months, you now have earned your right to eat. There's no earning toxicity. There's no earning cyanide. You can never earn a poison. So please get your minds right about. And I really want to start it off with this, because it's really disappointing and heartbreaking to see people who've done so well for 3 months, whose results, like before after results, are so amazing. After 6 months, they come back to us with like some crap happening to their body. That's just not the right thing to do. I don't like taking money from people again and again. I really feel like a failure when that happens. I hope you guys get this in your heads. I'm so I'm sounding like a principal, like a school teacher, but I have the safety of doing that with the tribe. I can't be like this on social media. Pratisha tells me that people will really get scared and run away. But you guys know who we are. You guys know what we are about. You guys know the level of care and commitment that goes into taking care of your health from our side. Please do that for yourselves also. Okay. So stop fantasizing about these normal foods that you want to eat. They're abnormal. They were designed by big food, big agriculture, big pharma to get you addicted so that you would fall sick and then you would become a profit center for them. Okay. From the time you're born to the time you die, they do different things to get you to put in toxins in your body, to get you to put in junk in your body. And when you fall sick, they again make a profit out of it. So understand that you're up against a huge capitalistic world out there that is trying to make profit out of the human body. And become aware of these choices that you're making, not because Swati is telling you, not because Suyash is telling you, or not because I come in and like yell sometimes suddenly in between your groups. Because it's your body, you own it. And you have to decide what the outcome of it has to be. Okay, so please stop this when will I eat normal food question again, and don't even do that in your trackers, right? It's very annoying to see it. Okay, so this is one. Now the question really is, why do we go ahead and do it? Because I've seen some of the most disciplined people also on the program suddenly fail. And this is where the mind aspect comes in. Okay, so what happens to us is we've often associated a lot of emotions, a lot of sense of comfort, a lot of sense of safety with certain foods. Either they were given to us as a reward mechanism when we were kids, especially chocolates, right? I know even now for kids who do well in something, they're given a chocolate as a reward. So your brain starts associating that chocolate with a reward mechanism. And then every time you eat chocolate, dopamine is released, irrespective of the fact that chocolate has, anandamide and caffeine and all of that, which will anyway physiologically create that effect. Things like Maggie, people call Maggie their comfort food because of the way Maggie was advertised, because how easy it is to make it, and because the level of engineering that's gone into that taste maker ka packet, that is, it's designed to ensure that it hyper stimulates all your taste buds and you feel really good when you eat it for those 2 minutes. So what happens to a lot of us is, in those moments when we experience any kind of stress, either the mental stress of having to work on a deliverable or having a deadline, which is positive stress. It's not, stress is not always bad, right? But you have a sudden workload to finish or something like that, or you experience a stress of a relationship, like a toxic relationship, some passive aggressive snide comment somebody said, or you're experiencing people in your life whose entire goal is to kind of pull you down and to keep pointing out to you where you are a loser and you're not really awesome, right? There are people like that in our lives. So when you experience this kind of stuff, or you just don't have heart-to-heart connections, like deep connections with anyone, and then to fulfill that hole, you have somewhere there normalized using food as that thing, right? And then sometimes food also becomes, and this is where it gets like into the danger zone. Food also becomes something that you use to celebrate something good that's happening in your life. And in India, especially, food is used as a celebratory mechanism all the time. So understanding where a craving is coming from becomes really important, because no matter what, yeah, like a pizza from Domino's is bad. A McDonald's burger and French fries are bad. It doesn't matter what state of being I am in. It is going to hurt my body, right? So if I feel the need to go and eat that, I have to ask myself why. What is the memory that I'm associating with this food? If you have a hard time doing that, even after your 3 months program is over, your groups are always open, they're always active. Please ping us. Okay, because sometimes what happens is who you were in 2017 is very different from who you are in 2021, because 2020 happened to all of us. And what 2020 brought out for most human beings is it actually showed them where a lot of their insecurities are, where a lot of their anxieties are, how the people in their life really are. Like, for the first time, you were actually forced to live compulsorily in a house with all the people who lived in your house. And that's not always a positive thing, right? Because a lot of shit came out in front for a lot of people. So that stuff, the mind stuff, the emotional stuff, the what's inside your heart stuff, how is your heart broken stuff, that can impact your food choices. And there aren't enough people whom you can talk to about it. So if you feel yourself sliding down, and I did this for Old Tribe members, I actually did calls with them because I just wanted to understand what is going on with people, right? So anytime in your life, if you feel that your health is becoming second priority, like self-neglect is now coming back as a pattern, please ping us on the groups. This is not a one-time 3-month thing. It's a lifetime commitment to your health, okay? Just understand this. Hunger itself is something that I have been analyzing. I have been experimenting with not eating food and then seeing, what is my relationship with food itself. And anyone who wants to have a go at this, do it. It will really change how you perceive food. Because for me, now food is literally like what I used to keep saying for the last 2 years, that food is information, food is information. Food has become that. So unless I need food for a particular reason, I don't feel the need to eat it. So food is no longer my celebratory mechanism. Food is no longer my let's fill in this empty space right now where I have nothing to do and I'm bored. Let's fill food into that space. Food is no longer that. Food has become literally, what does my body need to make energy? What does my body need to repair and heal itself? Let's give my body that much. That is all food has become. And that's where my experiments with water fast started coming in. So a lot of people put like muscle growth. So water fasts are not going to help you in growing muscle. Okay, what your muscles need is protein and good workouts. Like, your muscles will only grow when they are challenged. Without a challenge, your muscle is not going to grow. And this is what also happens to a lot of us who are sitting through the day, because our glutes are not being challenged at all to hold our body straight or to even walk. They start atrophying, and that's why a lot of back problems and your knee problems, ankle problems start coming in, because your glutes itself have started becoming smaller. So if you want to grow muscle, you need to challenge those muscles, and the best way to do that is by doing good quality workouts. Okay. After you challenge a muscle, it actually breaks down. When it breaks down, it needs good protein to give it something that will help it rebuild itself. When it is doing this process of rebuilding, that's when it grows. So if you want muscle growth, you need to give it a challenging workout, and then you need to give good quality protein. Plant protein, unfortunately, does not do the job. Like, it is just extremely conclusive now. I'm seeing this with my own body. The kind of weight increments I'm able to do in the gym week on week is beyond what I used to be able to do when I was plant-based. Plant-based mein to I used to take recovery ke liye only 3-4 days. So if you need good quality protein to help your muscle mass grow, you need animal-based protein. It's beyond doubt now. All these vegan bodybuilders take huge amounts of supplements. You don't know what's there in their supplement racks. You don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. Okay, so don't go by what you see on social media, and don't go by what you see in movies that are made with huge budgets. Like, which was that? Game Changers. All right. So for muscle building, you need protein. You need a muscle challenge. So water fast is not going to do that for you. Yes, water fast can trigger autophagy, by which there is cellular renewal and detoxification and all of that. So for that, it is good. How do you do a water fast? to begin, you first come into a state of well-being, because if you're somebody who already has a lot of dysfunctions going on, your body is in a state of stress. At that point, if you push your body into a water fast, where you've not even understood what is triggering your hunger, where do your hunger signals come from, you're going to crash and you're not going to succeed at it, and it's really going to cause some level of damage. So I don't recommend water fast until you come into a point of, at least a stable state of being where your insulin levels are not fluctuating too much. I know there are a lot of health coaches, practitioners, nutritionists, yoga gurus who like recommend water fast and dry fast all the time. I don't know if they really follow with the people who are doing it and actually see the repercussions of that. Okay, I think they just give advice that they just want to give it and create some popular agenda around it. I don't want any of you from the tribe doing this unless we know for certain that you can actually go through a water fast well. So how do you water fast? Well, I have found water fasting in a state of ketosis to be extremely easy. Like there's no challenge at all. But when I was eating a lot of carbs and I was doing fruits and grains and all of that, my body really found it challenging even to do a 24-hour water fast. So ketosis, like if you want to really ideally do a superb water fast, see if you can get your body into a state of ketosis first, become fat adapted, and then switch to doing a water fast that you can sustain for 5 days, 7 days and all of that. You don't die. Like you won't die unless you starve for nearly 3 to 4 months. Okay. Because first the body will start utilizing your fat stores. And we know most of our bodies have enough fat reserves. After the fat is burnt off, then your body will start going to protein. That's when you start seeing that wastage happening, and your muscles start shrinking because your body is utilizing protein for energy now. After the protein is over and after nothing is left, there's a possibility that you might actually die, which while we are there with you, we won't let that happen. Okay. So if you really want to switch to a water fast for a long period just to see the impact it has on your body, my recommendation is to become fat adapted. So your body quickly switches to ketosis even when you're in a fasting mode, and you don't feel low on energy, you don't feel cranky, you don't feel irritable because you have this constant supply of energy happening. The electrolytes that I mentioned, Kumar, you also were very interested in this, right? So the 3 things that I am using right now is salt, which is sodium chloride. Second is potassium chloride, which I bought as a supplement from Amazon. And third is magnesium citrate. So what I'm doing, I'll send the proportion on the tribe itself. I make 1 liter of water in the morning, which has these 3 in the right proportion. And then through the day, I keep adding bits of this 1 liter of this electrolyte solution into my actual drinking water. So I'm not drinking like a salt solution in the morning, right? I'm just making sure that whatever water I'm consuming is getting all the electrolytes I need through the day. And then I finish this 1 liter solution through a 24-hour period. So every 24 hours, I'm giving my body a lot of water. The difference I have noticed in that is I don't feel very thirsty anymore. Because earlier when I used to try to do like a ketogenic thing, I would keep drinking a lot of water and I would keep visiting the washroom a lot so that water would just keep coming and going. Now these electrolytes are actually going at a cellular level and they're hydrating my cells itself. So I don't feel extremely thirsty through the day. And I'm just feeling really great. Like, a lot of times what happens is your thirst gets masked as hunger because your body also knows that food also contains water, right? So sometimes when you're thirsty and you don't realize it, you might think you're hungry and you might go eat something. So because my cellular thirst is being addressed with electrolytes plus water, so it's like proper hydration is happening. Hunger is not a misleading symptom there. So that's the electrolyte. So even if you're working out in a gym, my recommendation is to make this electrolyte solution and have this through the day. So whatever loss of electrolytes you're having in the gym session, like when you're working out, when you're weight training, or when you're doing anything aerobic, you're getting your hydration right. What else in a water fast? See, I would recommend like an extended water fast, maybe once a month, around 24 to 48 hours. not more than that, because you don't even want to torture your body, right? I am experimenting with, like I said on the tribe, that I want to do a 5-day one, like a 100-hour one, and see if I can actually pull that off or not. But that's like purely experimental, maybe once a quarter or once in 6 months. Otherwise, I personally wouldn't want to do longer water fast, because I need the protein also, right? I'm working out in the gym. I need to give my body the protein it needs. And what I said about understanding the physiology of hunger. Now, this is very, very interesting. So last week, I started off a water fast on Sunday night. My last meal was at 8:30 p.m. And I started off with planning a 24-hour thing. And after 24 hours also, I was not hungry and like no energy fluctuations, nothing, full day of work. Like literally nothing was happening. I was like full of energy. I could do a workout, everything. So I was like, let me see how much I can extend this. So Tuesday also, I was doing really well until 6 p.m. And I was like, maybe I can pull this off for another day, right? So until 6 p.m., I was doing absolutely fine. And then I found out my personal Gmail ID was hacked. And that Gmail ID actually has a lot of other information also, including my bank stuff, my daughter's details, and all of that, right? Like the case I'm fighting. So for me, it was like, shit, this ID is hacked. I better go fix it. So I had to go change passwords there. I had to go change all my bank passwords. So whole lot of time went into just the brain really figuring out everything I had to do in the stress moment. So there was stress for sure, right? Now, for 45 minutes, I did this password changes and everything. And then when I finished doing that, like when I finished that activity, I felt extreme hunger. Like I can't even explain it. Like hunger from the pit of my stomach, right? I was like, where is this hunger coming from? And then I realized that in that stress, I had utilized a lot of resources that I wasn't using in such a like it wasn't like a blast through the day, right? Through the day, I was using whatever energy I needed in a very calm, steady state of flow, except for those 45 minutes where I just needed a lot of everything, maybe the zinc, everything, the adrenals also were overactive and all that, right? So now the body realized that it was depleted. So it sent this extreme hunger signal, and I just wanted to analyze that hunger. I didn't want to eat because I wanted to see where is this hunger coming from, what happens if I don't fulfill it, and just that, like what happens now. So I noted down that extreme hunger, and then I continued to do my work, and I kept noticing what was happening. So now, because I didn't answer that hunger, my energy level started dropping. So I was like, okay, I'm going to eat. So I told my body, don't worry, we are going to eat once we finish work. After energy level started dropping, my mood started dropping. Okay, so mood didn't drop first, mood dropped after energy went down. And then I was in this mood like, what am I even doing on this planet? Why the hell are humans so stupid? Why can't they just take care of their health? It's such an easy thing we're trying to teach them. Like, forget it, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to leave. And all of that. So all of that started happening. And then, okay, I understand where this is also coming from, right? So somebody might have tagged that as depression. It wasn't really depression. It was just like this questioning of what's the purpose of existing. And then that also passed. And then I was like, now this has passed. Now is the time to eat, because I am not going to go and overeat to fulfill some gap. I'm not going to go and eat just because I want to feel better. I'm eating now in response to what my body needed. And, by the time I reached this point of saying, okay, I'm going to eat now, again, I was in a steady state of energy. But then I was like, I've decided and I'd already planned what I was going to make and eat. And also I went and ate. So a lot of people and a lot of us, including me in the past, I don't think I had this conscious awareness of where my hunger is coming from. So we know people in the tribe who feel hungry every 2 hours, even if they've eaten a full meal, right? And it can't be nutritional hunger. It really can't. If you've eaten a good energy dense meal with the nutrients you need, your body has gotten what it needs. Then that hunger is coming from some other place. And it's really important you start analyzing that, because the minute you change your relationship with your hunger, your relationship with food will change. Once your relationship with food changes, you don't really need us. You just don't. You just need like guidelines. Now we found the electrolyte formula that will work for gym workouts, right? So that kind of guidance will continue to offer you. Whatever knowledge we receive, we'll continue to share that. But you don't need a coach. to hold you accountable that, hey, don't eat this, why did you eat this, and all of that. You become accountable for your own body. And, ultimately, that is what I want for everyone. Like, they start owning their body, right? Like, it shouldn't be my decision to design a protocol and give it to you that, oh, you're supposed to stick to this and eat it. You should be the one saying, hey, my body needs this. This is what I saw in my analysis. Just tell me what I need to eat and I'll eat it. But that is easier said than done. So we still exist and we'll continue to offer you support. But that's what I wanted to share. Any questions, anything you want to discuss, we can do that now. So many people, I'm so happy because I've not looked at my screen until now. Hi, Dinesh. Hi, Pallavi.
Hi.
Question?
Hi.
How do we put our body in ketosis? So, Kavita, see, our body runs on two sources of fuel. One is glucose, which is what most of us consume, which is what most of us use when we are eating a lot of carbohydrates. Now, the body has an alternative mechanism for creating energy. That process is called as ketosis. So, ketosis is an alternative mechanism. Okay, it's not the standard. So, if you eat anything, like if you eat a dosa or idli, it's going to go through a standard flow, which is those carbohydrates get broken down into glucose, and the glucose goes into your bloodstream, and then through insulin, it goes into your cells, and your cells make energy out of it. Ketosis is an adaptation mechanism that our ancestors had because there would be times when they wouldn't really get access to food for a couple of days, right? So in that time, what the body does is it starts using fat as a source of energy. For your body to use fat as a source of energy, it breaks down fat and it creates something called as ketones. So instead of glucose, you now get a ketone body, which is another molecule. And then these ketone bodies then go into your the Krebs cycle, like the biochemical pathways, and then they get used for energy. So some ketones actually get converted to glucose also, but that's like deep biochemistry. Basically, the ketogenic process is where you're using fat as a source of energy. How can you do that? One is like just starvation itself, like you go into a water fast if everything is okay, and after 2 days you'll actually switch to ketosis automatically. That's your body's inbuilt mechanism. What can you do to stay in ketosis if you're going to eat food is you make your diet fat predominant. So you have the protein that you need. Like for me, 60 grams of protein per day is what I need. So I make sure I get my 60 grams of protein. Then whatever calories I need beyond that, I get it from fat. Now, when you are depriving your body of carbohydrates, automatically the body starts utilizing fat for energy. And ketogenic diets have actually been, for the lack of any other word, they've really been bastardized. People just think it's fat versus carbs. They don't really understand the beauty of the biochemistry that goes in. So people do ketogenic diets, even like they'll eat chicken kebabs fried in oil, and they'll think, fat mil gaya, protein mil gaya, ketosis is done. It's not really that, right? So your body will do well on a keto protocol if you're using saturated fat as your fat source. Secondly, that entire almond flour and almond oil and all those almond recipes that people on keto diets do, that's horrible, because then almonds are again giving you a lot of PUFAs and oxalates and everything that's going to mess up your internal biochemistry. So those keto diets, they're very short term and very hacky and never really fulfilling. What we aim for is nutritional ketosis, where you're getting the protein that you need from good quality protein sources. Again, making sure the amino acid profile, making sure the saturated fat and all is in the right ratio, and then adding the fat around it. Whatever you're not going to get from your diet, you supplement. So for me now in nutritional ketosis, I take vitamin D, I take magnesium glycinate, which most of you are on anyway, and then I take B complex. And now I'm doing this electrolytes with potassium and sodium and potassium, sodium chloride plus magnesium. So that's really giving my body everything it needs. I've had a deficiency issue in the past from my CBC, right? Like this B6, B12, I've mentioned this earlier also. And a lot of that was coming in from the mercury that I put in I had a mercury amalgam from the time I was 16. So now that's been removed. I went through a chelation process. So maybe in another month, that issue will not exist anymore. But everything else is really fine. No cramps, no body aches, no constipation. A lot of people who go into a ketogenic diet actually experience constipation and cramps big time because they're doing it really wrong. So what puts a body into ketosis? Either starvation or doing a fat-based diet, like more fat, very little carbs, and protein just as much your body needs. I hope that answers your question. So if any of you want to do the keto, and yeah, the other thing is vegan keto is really hard. It really is hard because for us to get the protein you need, if you're vegetarian, we have to find vegetarian protein sources. Now, there is not a single vegetarian protein source apart from paneer that doesn't have carbohydrates. And then paneer, we know what it does, right? Because it's dairy. So it's very, very hard to put vegans into ketosis. We try our best, but it often leaves them feeling very dissatisfied with what they're eating, like not satiated. Is that a word? Anyway, so vegan ketosis is really hard, can be attempted if you're very, very like focused on the outcome that you want, and like your relationship with food is not about enjoying food and things like that. I have no problem with enjoying food. I'm just saying that that should not be the everyday goal, right? It should not be like, you shouldn't wake up thinking of what am I going to eat through the day. You should be thinking of what am I going to create through the day? What value am I adding to the community through the day? How is my existence? How is every breath that I am gifted creating something amazing for another human being? And then, of course, what do I need to keep this machine going? I'm just going to put that into the machine. That's ideally what most of us should wake up and go through the day. But I know it's hard given the kind of society and the conditioning and all of that we have. Any other questions? Let me look at the chat. So Avni, the lemon plus salt water, lemon will add flavor, but it won't really give you the potassium or the magnesium that you need. So lack of potassium, lack of magnesium, both can create cramps. Magnesium is still okay because we take magnesium glycinate as a supplement, but it's potassium that people on ketosis need or on a water fast need, and that's not going to come unless you add potassium as a salt, because otherwise you'll get potassium from coconut water, bananas and all of that, right? But when you're water fasting, you're not eating, then you need potassium to come in as a external supplement. Can honey be used in the concoction you mentioned to balance out the electrolytes during fasting? You tell me. So the entire thing about fasting is you're depriving your body of calories. No calories. Give any calories to your body is going to use that for energy, and it's not really technically a fast. It can be a low calorie, it can be a calorie restricted approach, which also is okay for some people. Don't call it fasting, you can't really be having any calories. So honey is not a 0-calorie sweetener, right? Honey has calories. So you can make this electrolyte solution for a daily basis with honey in it, but don't use it for a fasting period. How long can we follow keto diet? So even the big proponents of keto protocols like Dr. Mercola and all, they say that not more than 3 months. After 3 months, you should start carb cycling. You should bring in carbs like maybe once a week, or you eat 1 week of carbs and then you go back to 3 weeks of ketosis, but you do need carbs. So this is the thing about diets, right? Like all these camps that are there, like you saw the meme, right? The vegan versus carnivore thing. They'll be like only vegan and only carnivore. It doesn't work like that. Our body is not unidimensional. Even if you do ketosis, 2-3 months tops, after that you bring back carbs, you bring back that way of eating, or you do a low carb. Like my goal with ketosis is to reach this place of 57 kg. It's my goal. I've kept that as my goal weight. And from there, I can maybe play around with a little carbs, especially fruits, because I really like fruits, right? So what I've noticed with my body is I can stay in a state of what is called as nutritional ketosis, which is a ketone level of about 0.5 to 0.6, and still go through the day without getting out of ketosis. But that doesn't result in weight loss for me. So I see weight loss maximum when I'm at a higher ketone level. But 2-3 months tops, not more than that. Why is there acidity during fasting? So Yogesh, that is See, that's why with fasting, you have to make sure that your other systems are in place, right? And actually, most people don't experience acidity during fasting. It's only if your gut microbiome is imbalanced that acidity can happen, like if the H. pylori thing and all is there. Secondly, if there is anxiety and stress at a mental level, that can trigger acidity because, and that's where I speak of this approach to food, and I speak of like even when they do water fasting in retreats and all these camps, now it's usually in an isolated place where you're not interacting with your real world drama, where it's just you. You can do a lot of breath work, you can just relax, you can sleep if you want, and then you do a water fast. But if you're trying to deal with life as it is for you right now, and then you're trying to do a water fast, your body is not getting the energy it needs to deal with all of that stuff that's happening, and then it's going to give you different symptoms. So to me, acidity during a water fast, if H. pylori and all of that is taken care of already, it typically is more of an indicator of, you know, something that you are probably in denial about from your life that you don't want to address, and the body is sending you signals. But of course, like first is check at the physiological level, like make sure there are no pathogens, make sure that the gut microbiome is balanced. And that's why we do water fast at the end of the 3-month protocol. We don't bring it in early unless there's a specific need for some case where we see that water fasting is really going to help. Can I explain a bit about the gut? Sure. I mean, I can talk about this for 2 hours. Maybe if Ria there? No, Ria is not there, but Ria is covering the gut microbiome right now in the academy. Actually, Avni, why don't you talk about the gut? Because Ria has finished that session. Where is Avni?
Yeah, I'm here. What do you want me to talk about? That's so much to
I
talk.
don't know. Yogesh asked, can you please explain about the gut? You've just finished that chapter in your class yesterday. I know Ria did the gut microbiome, so you can talk about it.
Maybe some other time.
The academy students on the stage.
You've got to give me notice.
Yeah. So basically, see, Yogesh, the gut is this entire system from your oral cavity right up to your rectum, right? Like from where food goes in to the place where it comes out from. And different places in that. So most people refer to the gut as just your stomach and your small intestine in that zone, but I look at it like as the gastrointestinal system itself. So from the starting to the end is what I think is the entire gut health. Now, here is where we'll produce a lot of enzymes, a lot of like saliva contains a lot of enzymes, and then we actually break down food, make it into smaller particles, and then we send it down through our throat into our stomach. So your stomach is the first place where a broken down aspect of your food starts interacting with your body. And that's where you have your stomach acid. Often people who have an H. pylori infection, like we've had a few in our tribe itself, right? Like people who have an H. pylori infection, their stomach acid levels are all messed up because that H. pylori itself is creating a lot of its waste products. Then that impacts your original, your HCl that your body makes. Now, typically, if your stomach is functioning well, you have this stomach acid, the HCl, and a few little more enzymes, and then the stomach uses this chemical stuff, a mechanical function of crushing, and it breaks down food into like a paste-like thing, okay, which then goes into your small intestine. The small intestine is where now the food gets broken down even more with all the enzymes that come in from the liver, the pancreas, this acid also is there, and then you have your gut microbiome, which is the unique culture that each of us have, and it is as unique as a thumbprint, okay? Like no two people have the same gut microbiome. So the bacteria also work with all these enzymes and everything and start helping your body digest this food, make it smaller. Then it gets absorbed, largely gets absorbed in the small intestine. It goes to the large intestine, where again there is a microbiome that's working on fermenting this food further. So like, you know, maximum utilize. You know how sugarcane juice makers put that sugarcane through the machine 5 times to make sure you get all the sugarcane juice out of it. That's what your body is doing from top to bottom to make sure you get all the nutrients out of the food that you eat. What goes wrong in a lot of people is, like I said, in the stomach, you could have infections, you could have H. pylori, or you could have taken a lot of antacids, and that's why your acid making capacity is low.
Yeah.
Or you could have a physical anomaly, like your sphincters itself might not be functioning well, the muscle tone might be poor. So indigestion could happen at a stomach level. In the small intestine, often what happens is because of things like gluten. Gluten is notorious for this. Gluten can literally, for small intestine, it has this thing called as villi, like hair-like structure, microscopic hair-like structure, which is on the internal surface of your small intestine. So they are here. So as food is passing, these villi are absorbing, and more food is going in, like lower through the system, and nutrients are going into your bloodstream. What gluten does is like a scrubbing brush. It scrubs, and the villi become flattened. The minute the villi become flattened, then your intestine is open for inflammation. So a lot of people who have digestive problems, who have digestive symptoms, gluten has really done this. And it can be other food also, like all this processed food that we eat, a lot of toxins that come from food, the preservatives, the additives and all. So they start ruining this beautiful mucosal lie that's there, cell wall of your small intestine. When that happens, sometimes there are holes, and then your food starts escaping into your bloodstream, which then starts creating what we know as a leaky gut syndrome. Often, that leaky gut syndrome is what creates a lot of autoimmune problems in people. So, now how do we do this at Thrive? We bring in, like, we take away all the foods that are triggering this erosion. Then we bring foods that are going to heal the gut lining, and then we allow that healing to happen. Sometimes it needs probiotics, which is why we give you a probiotic supplement for the first month at least. Established nicely. Sometimes it needs a deeper intervention, like a lot of herbs, like marshmallow roots, slippery elm, so that healing is really. Often constipation also is an outcome of the gut lining really being injured. So that is your gut, top to bottom. You could end up with problems anywhere because it's like a machine. Our job is to find out why a particular problem is happening in a particular zone. Okay. Any other questions? Is boiled apple good for leaky gut? Can probiotic capsule be had for long periods? Not meaning here. So no, Yogesh, I really don't think one should be taking a probiotic supplement for longer than like a month. Maybe see if you had an antibiotic exposure because some infection happened or you had a surgery or something like that and you were given antibiotics, then you take probiotic again to re-establish that flora. But one doesn't need to take a probiotic every day. I myself don't take a probiotic anymore. I started experimenting with making water kefir. So that gives me my daily dose of probiotic. We'll share that soon on the tribe. Once like the recipe is successful and like I know this is showing consistent results. But no, I really don't think you need to take a probiotic for long once your basic gut flora is established well. Boiled apple, good for leaky gut. See, boiled apple, the thing is, see, what your leaky gut needs is glutamine as an amino acid, and then like good quality protein so it can rebuild itself, and then things that will prevent irritation. So aloe vera gel is one of those things, slippery elm is one of those things, and we actually have this Dr. Amy Meyer's formulation called Gut Revive, which really has worked wonders for a lot of people. So that's what your gut needs. Like I personally believe that more than boiled apple, good quality protein and glutamine is what really brings about a better healing process in the gut. Sometimes some people are deficient in enzymes. So the pancreas and the liver, especially the pancreas, if the pancreas are not making all the enzymes that the body needs for digestion, they end up with gut issues. Typically, there's like a lot of nausea or just no appetite, they have no hunger, or there is undigested food coming out in stools. So that's an indicator of lack of enzymes. Sometimes for them, we just supplement with digestive enzymes for a short period until their body says, oh, this is what I need to make to get better, and the body starts making these enzymes on their own. So sometimes we give digestive enzymes also when we need to repair leaky gut. If not supplements, then which probiotics can we take regularly? So that's what I'm saying. So I'm experimenting with this thing called water kefir. Basically, I'm making, wait, let me get it from Himanshu. Hold on, okay. Okay, the advantage of living right across office. So I found this, Kavita, this one will interest you. I found this thing called as coconut kefir in a store. And basically it is just coconut water that's fermented with a culture called kefir grains, which is like bacteria and yeast together. So I had that, so it didn't throw me out of ketosis, so I was sure there's no sugar in it. And it's coconut water, so it's giving me electrolytes. And it's loaded with probiotics, okay? So it's like, so when that fermentation process happens, now it becomes like soda. So all of you who miss soda, it's like a fizzy, lovely drink that's tangy and mildly sweet, and it's so super tasty. So I've started making this at home. This is my own personal coconut water kefir. I don't know if you can see the bubbles that are coming out of that. Once this is ready, and like I'm telling you, once the formula is ready, and once my kefir grains have grown to a large degree, I will probably share these grains with anyone who's in Pune. And then for the guys who are outside Pune, we'll send you a link from where to buy them. But you can make these probiotics at home and have them. Secondly, the coconut curd, the coconut buttermilk recipes that Swati and Suya share with you, where you're using our probiotic supplement itself and then making coconut milk, coconut curd out of it. That also becomes a probiotic that you can use every day. People do sauerkraut and kimchi also. What I have seen the problem with that is like sauerkraut, kimchi often have cabbage. So if you're somebody who has, digestive issues or a very sensitive gut, then that cabbage itself can create more gas. So that's why I don't recommend them. And again with this, we need to be a little careful with kefir also, because if you drink too much of it, it can overload your small intestine with like too many bacteria at one go. Then that creates like a small intestinal bacterial overload, which is called a SIBO. So once this is like standardized, I will share it on the tribe. But you can do this for probiotics. So Dinesh, I answered your sauerkraut and kimchi question there, I think. So you can try a small batch, see if it works for you, see if it's giving you any inflammation. Like, because we know in your case, there are certain foods that you're really allergic to, right? Like you get different symptoms in your body. So do a small batch, test it, see if it's working for you. Like that day I had found this honey fermented garlic probiotic, which was basically garlic that was fermented along with honey with some probiotic culture. And I had like one garlic out of that, and my stomach was so, like, it was hurting and it was really bad. Like, it just didn't work for me, right? So with probiotics, the culture becomes really important, and whatever food is there as a base becomes important. So you can test it, see if it's okay, and then decide you want it. Zentil every 6 months I would recommend, because we are exposed to like these parasites, right? Especially like I do a lot of barefoot walking, for example, outdoors, and then sometimes a lot of these hookworms and all can like get attached to your foot and then travel through your body. If you're doing a lot of veggies, salads, you will not see these microscopic eggs. So it's best to do Zentil once every 6 months. It's interesting, like I was reading about this COVID study where they used a deworming, I think ivermectin is a deworming medicine, right? And they used ivermectin and they had good results for people with COVID, because it was basically blocking the same pathways in your body that a parasite would use to create dysfunction. It was blocking the same pathways and preventing the virus from creating a dysfunction. What is the quantity of Zentil that these guys have given us? So not Zentil, like adults, we recommend albendazole, especially in India. So you just take one albendazole every 6 months after dinner, 2 hours after dinner, and that should be enough. Not more than that. What is? Kumar, you have a question. I can see your hand. You can ask the question here.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Mugdha?
I can.
Okay. I have two questions. I mean, you've already touched upon one, but I wanted to get a little more in depth on probiotics. Isn't curds or yogurt lactose free? Just like how you've introduced butter into your diet, isn't this pretty much the same?
No, so
And
yeah. So go ahead.
secondly, okay. Secondly, my question was on sugarcane juice. Is it really good for liver health? Is it people talk about it?
Yep. So see, the thing with curd is it's not just about lactose, it's also about that casein, which is what inflames a lot of people. Right. So if you're okay with A2 milk, if A2 milk is not triggering major dysfunction, imbalance, and all of that in your body, maybe you could make yogurt with A2 milk. We've done that for a couple of tribe members. That you could use A2 milk because it's the regular milk ka casein that is really a problem. But with A2 also or with dairy, now it's better to use unpasteurized raw dairy because the minute you pasteurize it, there's one enzyme. So you have to remember the name of that enzyme. I can't remember it. There's one enzyme in raw dairy that helps with digestion itself as you're consuming it. So if you heat that milk, you lose that enzyme and then you lose the benefit of being able to digest that. So A2 milk, if you're tolerating it, you can try making yogurt out of it and then see if that's working well. It's not only about lactose, it's also about the casein.
Unpasteurized milk comes with its own dangers, right? I'm sure you're aware.
No, so that's what. No, so you have to know where it's coming from. Like I know this guy who has a few these A2 cows and like the level of hygiene that he follows. Also, there's a lot of fear around pathogens and raw food. Like I ate raw liver.
I saw that.
I've eaten raw egg yolks. I didn't get salmonella, right? So some of the like lactobacillus.
No, it's not just about salmonella, right? There are other diseases also, especially when it comes to dairy. Not necessarily foot and mouth disease alone. There are many. I mean, I'm not a vet, so I don't know so much.
Yeah, so the risk with raw dairy is a little high, no? So why you want to do it? Simple, but like,
okay. The other thing is A1 and A2. It's all about, I mean, mutation. So if genes didn't mutate, we humans would have been apes even now after millions of years. So have the dairy industry gone through mutation. So technically, there is no it's not that the A2 milk is void of A1 protein. It has both A1 and A2, is my understanding.
I haven't studied dairy that much in detail because anyway, I have no interest in including it in my diet. What I know is that these Jersey cows that like the commercially produced milk that we get, they're like genetically modified. Plus there's a lot of stuff that goes into their bodies to just make sure their milk yield is higher. And that milk doesn't do well for humanity. It just doesn't. By comparison, the A2, like those cows with the hump and all, are apparently the cows that like we traditionally, not traditionally as in like India made, but like if you look at the Maasai tribes and all, those are the kind of cows they have. And in fact, like I have been studying these tribal diets, right, to understand how is it that primal human beings eat. Like they don't have access to grocery stores, so what do they eat? So these Masai Mara wala people, I mean these that tribe,
right.
Their first meal is this cow's milk mixed with blood of that cow. Like they take a little blood out of that cow and they mix that blood and milk and they have that as the first meal. And the second meal is whatever animal they've hunted and maybe some roots and tubers that they've foraged or some berries. That's all they eat. So it's very interesting, right? And then their gut is like absolutely adapted to that. Like they're eating raw milk mixed with raw blood. So they're getting all the iron and everything from that blood, all the electrolytes, everything is coming. They're getting the calcium and everything from the milk, and then they're eating the animal meat for the protein that they need. And to them, that's like food. Like there is nothing other than that for food. So their life really revolves, like this Hadza tribe, their life just revolves around hunting. Like they wake up in the morning and all that decision making process that goes on is like which direction do we go to find which animal we can eat today. And then a good day for them, a celebratory day, is like the day where they've hunted like a really big animal. So very interesting. Your sugarcane juice question now. So see, sugarcane juice does have a lot of electrolytes. It does have a lot of minerals. It's also got glucose in a very, very absorbable form. So when somebody has a liver problem going on, like a jaundice or something, the liver stores of glucose are completely depleted at that time because it's trying to fight this inflammation, it's trying to fight an infection. So at that time, like this is my hypothesis why sugarcane juice really works well when somebody's liver is super dysfunctional. It gives the liver the glucose it needs along with a lot of other electrolytes, minerals, and whatever vitamins might be there in a readily absorbable form. But knowing what I know about biochemistry of the body and how the body, like what fuel source is optimal and all, I don't feel like maybe drinking sugarcane juice daily is a very good idea if you're not suffering from a health problem. So there, at that liver wala stage, sugarcane juice might be good as a medicine, but I don't think it should be there in your, like coconut water every day, I think is still okay because it's pretty low in sugar. It's giving you a lot of electrolytes. Like it's giving you a bang for the buck, right? Versus sugarcane juice, which is just loaded with so many carbs. And we are seeing more and more people
Okay.
coming across with really bad insulin resistance. Like either it's type 2 level of insulin resistance where just correcting the food and all helps make the body become more insulin sensitive. Sometimes it's become like type 2 has gone on for so long that the body has lost its ability to make insulin. Then at that point of time, where your insulin efficiency is not so good, why do you want to load your body with more sugar is the question. Yes, Yogesh.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
I ate raw liver. You heard that correctly. I did that as an experiment because see, cooking does destroy some nutrients, right? And then I'm telling you, my relationship with food is very, very different. It's usually on an experimental basis or just to learn what food does to what happens to my body when I eat something. So raw liver is something that a lot of these carnivore diet people were swearing by, and I just wanted to see if that was possible. I didn't eat it as in I didn't chew it. I basically cut it into really small pieces and like I would take it like a capsule and like drink it with water. Like chewing raw liver is still beyond me. I can't do that. But yeah, raw liver, raw egg yolks, I did that. But I didn't find it sustainable. Like as an experiment, it was okay. I couldn't do it for longer because it needs so much prep and planning also. You have to store raw liver correctly, you have to freeze it and then thaw it and all of that. Did your anger level increase then? Not at all. My anger, so I have analyzed my anger as well. My anger usually comes from a place when my consent is violated. It doesn't come for anything else. Or someone has agreed to fulfill certain expectations. We have mutually agreed on something and then they don't fulfill those expectations. It's only those two times when I feel angry. Of course, if somebody is trying to, wear me down or try to show that I'm not good enough or try to put some horrible idea into my head, anger comes in as a defense mechanism, but that's just a defense mechanism. I'm not even really, really angry. It's just a outward show, right? Actual anger, like from within, that deep-rooted one where everything changes in my body, comes typically when my consent is violated, when somebody is trying to force me to do something that I don't want to do. Like if someone comes with a vaccine right now, they will see what anger means. Or when another human being and I have agreed to do something together, and it has been a mutually profitable invitation that this person receives something in exchange for doing what I need, and then that person doesn't fulfill that expectation, that's the only time I really, really get angry. And that anger is useful, right? Because it's energy that pushes towards change. So also, I don't look at anger as a negative emotion at all. It's an extremely powerful emotion. It's like, when you're trying to build a road and, you're clearing away the stones and the other stuff off the road and you're trying to create a new neat path. You're doing that and then you come across this like little huge thing that's blocking the road. At that time, your hands are not going to be enough. So maybe you'll use a small amount of dynamite or explosive to just blast that thing out of your way. I look at anger like that. It's a really explosive, powerful emotion that can clear your path for you, but it should be used judiciously because you can't keep using explosive all the time because then you'll have nothing left. So no, raw liver did not make me angry. And I love my anger because it's always come in to protect me from something that was not really going well for me in my reality. No, non-veg food doesn't increase aggression. In fact, if you look at the vegan community and how they troll people who eat non-veg, you'll really wonder who's the more aggressive one. Because aggression itself comes from either not being able to express your anger accurately. So instead of directing your anger towards what you want as an outcome, you're angry and then it's just coming out in multiple ways. Or the passive aggressive thing that a lot of people have is because they don't even know how to speak their truth. So non-veg does not make anyone aggressive. It is a myth that is propagated. I am the calmest person right now, and you look at vegans on social media and you'll really wonder what's going on in their heads. The aggression sometimes comes from a lot of deficiencies that vegans don't supplement, right? And then they're just nuts, I'm honest. What is the difference between veg and vegan? Vegetarians basically do have some animal foods like honey and dairy and all of that. Vegans are like nothing that's related to an animal will ever enter their life. That's the difference. Vegetarians are a little more tolerable. Vegans are sometimes, unless they're supplementing, I don't have too many kind words to say about them. Is cooked meat less in nutritional values? It depends. Like some of the vitamin C can diminish because of cooking. Some of the B complex vitamins, if you're cooking at very high temperatures, some of the B complex vitamins will become lower. Also, like if you're cooking and if you're not using that water, a lot of the electrolytes from meat can leach into the water and then you won't get that water. But I mean, cooking meat is also the best way to make that protein more digestible and easier to absorb for your body. So it's okay to cook meat. What else? That's it. Any more questions? Okay, can everyone turn there? I have a question for everyone. I was thinking about it, like when I asked the question about what are the 5 words that thrive means to you. I was wondering if you had to describe thrive to a friend, how would you do that? Like, what would you tell? Anyone willing to go? Like, if you had to describe thrive to a friend, what would you say? No, say it on screen, like with video. I'm recording this. Come on, I've spoken for an hour. You can speak for 1 minute. Like, there are no wrong answers, right? This is not like asking me about the gut microbiome. You can literally say whatever you
Thrive
want.
is a changed way of lifestyle.
All right. That's a great, it's a great way of telling them. And I know you told this to your daughter also, no, Yogesh? Like, it's not a diet, it's a new lifestyle. What else? What else would you tell your friends?
Yeah, for me, I think there's a lot to say, but for the benefit of time, I would just say that if they want to reflect on life and on everything, they should come to the community. So it starts with food, but it's just not limited to food. It's also everything, mind, soul, together. So if they want to reflect on and improve and be part of to bring some change in their life, they should try this. Yeah.
You know how many hearts I'm sending you right now? Like heart, like this.
My night is getting brighter.
What else? What else do you like? How would you describe? Because see, we do so much, right? Like it's not just blood test, it's not just like food. So even for me, like how would somebody else, like I'm so deeply involved in this, I can talk about thrive, right? But if you had to tell somebody else what thrive is, like your friend or your family, how would you tell what thrive is? Pallavi, come on, you've been with us like for so long. You should be able to say something here. Okay, what is this? No, Yogesh, questions are never late. I'll still answer your question. But I want Pallavi to say this. So Pallavi is saying, for me, from you, it is a restoration from a depressed, inactive state. All right. Dinesh, if you had to tell our LPS friends what Thrive is all about. वीडियो पे अनम्यूट करके चैट में मत डालो, ये क्या है? Come on, Dinesh, you're up next. Okay, Dinesh needs time to prep. Who else is ready? Kumar, I'm sure you can say something. You've brought in so many people into the tribe. What did you tell your friends when you told them about Thrive? All right, I give up. Like there is just no response coming in.
Yes,
All right.
Mugdha.
Yeah.
What I like about Tribe is like Thrive is authenticity. You guys really know how things work.
Thank you. I think authentic is like the keyword even for me. And you are looking so different and you're looking so good and you're looking like your younger brother, man, like 10 years younger.
I know.
Amazing.
you.
I'm sure a lot of people must be complimenting you, no?
Yes. I get it regularly.
Wow, you're really like a completely different person from the last time I met you.
Yes.
Awesome.
Mugdha, I'd like to add.
Yes, Sujata.
If I have to describe Thrive, I would say an approach which will make life worth living.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Yogesh, you have a question. Does the body get dependent on supplements? So supplements are given to fulfill a need that food is not giving. So like vitamin D, if you don't take a supplement, it's very hard for your body to get it unless you're in the sun every day. So if you're not going to be in the sun, then you need the supplement. If you don't take the supplement, maybe for a month or two, your body can still use the stores that have been built up in the last few months of supplementing. But if you stop, you're going to become deficient again. Same thing with like for people who are vegetarians or vegans, when they don't take B12 or B complex as a supplement, the body will start getting depleted. So it is the unfortunately, this is the times and the environment that we're living in. So there are some basic supplements that we need to take. It's not that your body is dependent on supplements. It's that without these supplements, your body doesn't have the raw material it needs to optimally go through the day. So these things are not there in food. That's why we need to take them as supplements. But there have been days like I've also forgotten to supplement for three days at a stretch. Sometimes I've traveled and I've forgotten to pack my supplement, but it's okay. It's not like I'm crashing, right? Because I've been taking the base supplements for nearly 3 years now. And then I experimented different ones. But it's not like your body becomes dependent on them. It's that if you take them away for too long, you'll become deficient again. Pallavi saying in her case, she can tell she didn't get a chance to convince my friends as they were already impressed with how I was before. Yes, I know, Pallavi. I know how you were before and I know what you are now. So it's phenomenal the change that has happened. Any message for kids? They are also watching you. Oh my goodness, kids, like you have such a big opportunity in front of you because, you know, we as adults, including me, didn't really know how to take care of my own body. Nobody taught this to me in school, right? So I really abused my body and I messed it up with the wrong kind of food. And then at 37, I had to do so much work to make it better. You guys have fresh, young bodies. So if you actually take care of your bodies now, imagine what kind of health you will have when you're adults and when you're grown up. Like you won't have health problems. You'll just have amazing health that will help you do everything that you want to do with your life. So you won't waste like I had to spend 2 years just fixing my health, right? You won't have to spend that time in fixing your health. Those 2 years also you can do something amazing, like create great products, create great services, make a lot of money, whatever you want to do, right? You can do that because you're not spending time taking care of your health because nobody taught you how to take care of your health. So that's my message to you kids. Thank you, Pallavi. All right, I think we can end it here. I'm going for a moonlight trek tonight, which is like we're starting at 12. We'll be done by 6 in the morning. So I need to get some sleep in the day. Otherwise, I'll fall asleep on the trail itself. But any other questions? You can always put them on the group. I was not checking WhatsApp actually.
Good night, Daddy.
Thanks, Mugdha.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you, guys. Oh, wait, don't leave. I want to take a group. Like, just for a minute, everyone just turn on your videos and then let's take a screenshot. Are people left? Yes, for a minute. Screenshot time. I think that's done. Okay, bye-bye.